13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Welcome back to another episode of 13 Questions. This time we are joined by Dennis Morolda, but before we get into the interview section of the show, I have with me, as always, my Peninsula pal, Adam Loyal. Adam, how are you?
A Peninsula pal. I like it. What peninsula are you on, or am I the peninsula?
No, we're both
I guess
on.
I am down. You are? I didn't realize you were on a peninsula right now.
Yeah, Michigan's a peninsula, and so is Florida. The only two states that are peninsulas. It never occurred to you, did it?
No, it did not. Little known fact about Michigan.
We've actually got two. Got an upper one and a lower one.
How very modern of you.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, this interview was another Mark England referral. So Dennis is an enlisted coach member. That group of guys is just it's been a pleasure to talk to each and every one of them. I feel like I've learned so much just by doing the interview with them. So yeah, the enlisted referrals continue to live up to their name. It's this really great group of guys. So this interview is just like the others. So you'll absolutely get your value out of it. This is a value for value show. So it's what we like to kind of emphasize is practical pearls of wisdom. So and like what you can take away, because that's, as a listener, that's what kind of I looked for in podcasts before I got into hosting. So I like to emphasize that those like free takeaways that you can get just by listening. And yeah, these group of enlisted guys, Dennis included. Yeah, go back and check out the episodes. They're all good ones, and this one, like I said, is not any different. So with that being said, we do have an honor or a ritual, I guess, jingle that we do in every intro. It is our gratitude jingle, and the point behind the jingle is to kind of help us create a heart-mind connection, which is generally a good space in which to operate with. So, in order to do that, Adam and I just kind of talk about and discuss something that we're grateful for. And to kick that off, though, we do have a jingle. So, jingle is provided to us by Sir Felix Ortega, and you can find him at sirfelixortega.bandcamp.com. There is a link on our website too if you want to check out that. But yeah, this is our gratitude.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
All right. So my gratitude is actually kind of a special announcement in addition to a gratitude, but we are going to have our first repeat guest next episode, I believe, after this one airs, and that is going to be Darren Grimes. So
I think he's going to be a repeat.
Oh, he's all numbered. This will be his third appearance?
Well, he's also done a couple roundtables and some other things. So he's been partial guest in non-standard episodes. So I would give him the triple alumni and co-founder award.
Well, it's even more gratitude then, right? But yeah, that was my kind of gratitude for this episode was just Darren, and specifically or more in general, I guess, is the Grammarica podcast show with Graham Dunlap as co-host. Those two guys, watching them and following them over the years, have been really inspirational, and of course, being able to be a part of this show is just, amazing coming from the other side of the coin, and having as much freedom to direct it as Darren has given me has really been, just beyond words of how much, it's been awesome. So
No, listen, this is the second time we're going to have the same gratitude. The guest really got me thinking about paper because he talked about, being able to take ideas and just, send them off, destroy them, burn them,
yeah.
make them disappear. But in the same idea that, you know, there's things you can't remember that you can't hold in your mind. You create a grocery list, you create a story, a Bible, a constitution, a law, a letter. There's so many things in which we take a thought, we push it outside of our head, we hold it over here, we read a book, it impacts us, it changes our lives, we bring that information back. What if the story is intrinsic? So anyways, yeah, I was going to do paper, but now that you got me thinking about Grimerica, really my entire, I am a podcaster because of Darren and Graham. I went to a paradigm symposium, and they had a table there, knew nothing about them, met them in person, little banter talk here, nothing crazy. Went back, went to another paradigm symposium, saw them again, started listening to their podcast, and before long, I got pulled into the Grimerica behind the scenes editing, doing some black budget stuff, working with Darren, becoming part of this. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that those guys have done what they've done, because by them doing what they do, it's changed my life and what I do. And you can do the same thing. So do stuff.
Do stuff. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, dude. The other big part of impact Grimerica introduced me to my wife, actually. So Ellie and I met in the Discord chats all the way back.
I thought you were going to say that you were pregnant when you were making that big announcement. So yeah, it had the same magnitude of the meeting Ellie and.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was truly.
It was there.
It is very momentous. It was, synchronistic, and everything fell into place the way it has, and it's been a fun ride to see everything grow. So, yeah, that that was just my gratitude. Was yours? So, what about paper? You said something about
Well, no, just the idea of paper. I mean,
in general.
it is
Yeah.
in my mind, it is one of the greatest technologies that we've ever had. I mean, just imagine the stuff that you put to paper, that you put thoughts, that you put ideas down, that you come back to.
Mhm.
And there's things that you read that give you incredibly brilliant new ways of thinking. Old stories. Every book we've talked about on the show, the tale of the Iliad, these things are vastly important, and they're real things. The real things that were put down and can be shared and experienced. And that is paper. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's the definitive technology that has allowed everything else to happen. I mean, there is a blueprint, a schematic, a diagram of everything. And you wouldn't have that if you didn't have the ability to easily write, record, and share. So yeah, paper. And if those things and those thoughts are real, like our guest says, you put those things down and then you destroy them, both metaphysically, metaphorically, in your mind, but it gives it a place to go. And, if you're into the power of belief and the Wim Hof method and these ways of using your thoughts and visualization, to have a real personified destruction of a thought and idea may have profound effects on your life that you don't understand, even if it's just allowing your mind a way to completely destroy the thought by seeing its destruction. And it's a simple technology. It's just a visualization of thoughts onto a paper.
Yeah, that's cool. Like paper as a tool, as like a.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, look how much the world changed when the printing press changed or came along. Once that technology changed, and then mass media, and we're dealing with electronic texting and technology, but it's that same base. I mean, the Post-it note changed society.
Yeah, and it helps with like journaling too. I mean, there's tons of advantages of doing a journal, a gratitude journal, for instance. It requires paper. And yeah,
Voice of God, vibrations, thoughts, these all things are personified. If you get into doing any sort of magic or sigils, even if you just believe in visualization and doing the athletic and the athlete, running through your routine in your head and gaining actual improvement, putting thoughts down on paper can do things. So yeah, paper. So I'm thankful for Graham and paper.
that's
Graham, Darren, and paper should be the name of the episode.
not bad. Yeah. It's funny, paper kind of, I was going to have books as my gratitude, and paper's made of books, or books are made of paper, right? But that's kind of I'll use that as a segue to pick up my book on my big encyclopedia on stones. We're going to tackle the pink tourmaline
Oh, I love pink tourmaline.
for stone edition. Do you have a piece?
Angie probably has some, I'm sure. Personally, I do not think I do.
The chunk I have is in like a big rock of like quartzite, so it's a very raw specimen. It doesn't like look super pretty or anything like that, but it still gets the job done, right? Still holds the frequency.
Still
counts.
crystalline structure, structured by the world and the environment to make something beautiful that can be appreciated by you.
Exactly. And the point of this and of going over the stones that we have in the past intros, starting with episode 098, is to add them to our gratitude jar working spell. That is kind of an ongoing experiment to help facilitate and keep the mind and heart connection going. And so we're using these stones as kind of anchor uh, beacon things to draw in these etheric metaphysical properties that they represent and possess. And so when you make a donation to the show, your name gets written in purple ink uh, and is added to the jar and surrounded by the stones, kept on a green cloth. So that's kind of our working at the moment. It is a working, right? So it's an experiment and it's subject to change, and we'll keep adding stones to it. And we're going to add pink tourmaline today. This is a kind of there's a lot going on this stone, or at least I have a lot of information on it. And we will start. I guess we'll just start with how I kind of first um, started researching it. I'll take you through the entries as I went through them and learned about it. And that is first one is with Judy Hall's Encyclopedia of Crystals. This one is actually kind of interesting, this book, because it's categorized by color, right? Most encyclopedias are by name or alphabetical, right? But this one is by color, which is kind of neat. So
Yeah, but I mean, really, it's a different categorization. It's by a very scientific categorization of frequency.
yeah, it is a super cool book. It actually, friend of the show, Ben Wallsmith, left this behind, episode 49. If you haven't checked out Ben's show, but thanks, Ben. Shout out to Ben.
Don't tell him we need it for the show.
Oh yeah, yeah. So Judy writes about pink tourmaline specifically, and she says, in addition to carrying the generic properties of tourmaline, page 210, pink tourmaline is an aphrodisiac stone that attracts love in both the material and spiritual world. Placed over the heart, it assures you that it is safe to love. The stone inspires us in love while pointing out that it is necessary to love oneself before one can hope to be loved by others. And so we will go to page 210 and read about the generic properties of tourmaline, because that's a big chunk of what this stone is. Not just pink, but it is also tourmaline. And so, flipping to page 210, we see that it says the tourmaline comes from the Sinhalese term turamali. This stone is piezoelectric, meaning that it generates electricity under pressure, and pyroelectric, generating electricity with heat. The Dutch called the tourmaline aschentrekker, which is ash remover, as when heated, it attracts ashes from a pipe. Tourmaline has a strong affinity with Devic energies and is extremely beneficial for plants. Keeping pests at bay and buried in soil encourages growth of all crops. Purifying and transforming dense energy into a lighter vibration, tourmaline grounds spiritual energy, balances chakras, meridians, and auric bodies, and forms a protective shield. Traditionally used for scrying, it pointed to the culprit or cause in times of trouble and indicated a good direction in which to move. A powerful mental healer, balancing right and left hemispheres of the brain and transmuting negative thought patterns into positive ones, tourmaline assists in understanding oneself and others, taking you deep into your inner being, promoting self-confidence and diminishing fear. Banishing any feeling of victimization, it attracts inspiration, compassion, tolerance, and prosperity. Useful healing tools, natural or shaped tourmaline wands. See tourmaline, clear the aura. I'll start that over. Useful healing tools, natural or shaped tourmaline wands, clear the aura, remove blockages, disperse negative energy, and point to solutions for specific problems. Excellent for balancing and connecting the chakras at a physical level, they rebalance the energy meridians. Each color of tourmaline wand has specific properties. The appropriate entry, which we just did with the pink tourmaline entry. So, what do you think so far, Adam? I got to change books.
No, listen, I think that is awesome. You know, I love when stones have alternate uses. You know, you have a stone that has a piezoelectric or a pyroelectric charge. So when heated, you can use it for a functional use of putting it inside of a pipe to collect the ash and smoke. That's one technology for just what's a stone, you know, but you've also got like the watch I'm wearing has a piece of quartz in it that's also telling time through the electricity that's being pulsated and vibrating through it. So what other things are happening, being done with the intention in the world, with the stone that's there? It's absolutely fascinating that you would never know that that stone did that unless you did studying, stuck it in a pipe, or, you know, maybe they just wearing it around your neck or keeping it in a bowl, and there is no measurement of what it's doing, but it's still doing.
Yeah, it's so fun to learn about and to research. Like, and this wisdom is categorized, right? Came from somewhere, so it's important that we pass it along, especially when it can be so beneficial. But anyway, our second entry about pink tourmaline comes from the Book of Stones, who they are and what they teach. This is by Robert Simmons and Aisha Ashan, but we'll just read from Robert because this is a lot of information, like I said. So Robert writes, the color pink is associated with love and other matters of the heart, and pink tourmaline is the quintessential heart chakra stone. It is a representative of the feminine or yin energies. It is unsurpassed as a gemstone aid in healing old emotional wounds, particularly those of childhood. It emanates a soft, soothing energy that engenders feelings of comfort, safety, and nurturance. In meditation, one should hold or place a pink tourmaline upon the chakra, the heart chakra, visualizing a pink light radiating from the stone and ultimately encompassing the body in a pink cloud or bubble. This will infuse the entire emotional body with love and can restore a sense of wholeness. Pink tourmalines can be used to repair holes in the auric field caused by negative attachments or past abuse. Wearing or carrying a pink tourmaline crystal or gem throughout the day can assist one in releasing stress, worries, depression, and anxiety. These crystals can help the emotionally numb recover their passion and zest for life. They strengthen the link between the heart and crown chakras, opening the pathway for infusion of the heart with the highest divine energies. They can help the timid find the courage to love, and they can increase the trait of gentleness in most individuals. Wearing pink tourmaline turns one into a beacon of its loving and healing energies, making it more difficult for others to project negativity in one's direction and often influencing them towards greater kindness and tolerance. Pink tourmaline works energetically with, and he gives a list, some of them which are rose quartz, malachite, dioptase, and kunzite, which I have. I mean, we might add later, but they said they pair well for healing the heart and restoring love. So that is a little bit about pink tourmaline. It's certainly not exhaustive. I'm sure there's more information out there. But yeah, I'm going to put that on our green cloth altarpiece now. And so I think I had to go back and look and listen to, or I had to go back and listen to episode 98 to get the list of everything I had said we're going to include for our gratitude working jar. And there is one other type of quartz that I listed on there that we have not got to yet. So we will cover that next time. But until then, Adam, is there anything else that comes to mind when thinking about tourmaline or pink tourmaline specifically?
It's a beautiful stone.
It is. And I will get pictures of all these stones up, at least in Discord. I promise. I know I've said it before and I haven't, but I will stick true to my word and you will see them shortly. So that you can look forward to that. Yeah, probably just on Discord, maybe on Instagram. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. But until then,
Go out, do things in the world, affect other people. It's how we change. It's what we do. Yeah, make the world a better place. If you think something's beautiful and wonderful, share it. If you love the show, support us, help us make more. Just make the world a better place. Share knowledge, share wisdom. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And I hope you all do truly enjoy this episode.
this is 13 Questions with Dennis Morolda. And I guess we'll get started. Dennis, unless you had any last minute call? No?
No, I'm ready to roll.
All
I'm
right.
glad to be here. Good to meet both of you guys.
Right on. We'll get started with question number 1 then. What was the best advice ever given to you, and would you modify it at all today?
Well, I'm a big fan of going off the cuff, but also adding in humor whenever I can. So I remember recently my brother told me don't ever make eye contact while using a urinal. I thought that was good advice. Definitely comes in handy. I told that to my son who's 17 years old, but more in line with the serious nature of the question. It's interesting. As part of what I did with the program, I'm sure we'll get into, called Building Men, the poem that most resonated with me was "If" by Rudyard Kipling, and the last stanza of the poem is, "If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son." That to me was the greatest piece of advice I've ever received. And it was through poetry. The idea that you're not promised much in life. You're not promised tomorrow. But if you have a minute in front of you, if you could fill that minute with doing something productive for yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, or even better, if you can do something in that that's where the sweet spot is. So my piece of advice was that last line of the poem, "If."
Okay, you broke up there a little bit. Are you able to hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Now that we've got that figured out. The last line of the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling, and it spoke to you in the sense of taking, from what I got out of your answer, is that taking a moment each day and using it constructively in a positive way for yourself is worth, that one moment pitted against, a vast amount of whatever else time you can dedicate to that one piece of pie of time that you take out for yourself, that little slice, maybe at the beginning of the day when you do like a gratitude exercise or something. Is that what the poem was speaking about?
And I could say it again if it did get choppy. It's something that I've committed to memory. I used to use it with the boys social group that I ran when I was a middle school principal. And the last line is, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And I think about the idea of difficult challenges in front of us, and like, we're not promised tomorrow, right? But if we have this minute in front of us, and if we think of life in those terms, like, what can we do in the next minute? What can we accomplish? Can we put ourselves in intentionally uncomfortable situations, perhaps one for our own mental, spiritual, emotional, physical health? But then also, what can we do in a moment, in a minute, that can be of service to other human beings? And if we do think of things in those terms, imagine if we start stacking those unforgiving minutes on top of each other, the amount of good that we can do in the world if we continue to do that.
So, and you would not modify that then, I would take it?
Oh, I would have a tough time coming up with anything better than those lines that Rudyard Kipling put out there as far as modifying it. The one thing that I would add is being in service to other people. Like, is there anything that you could potentially do in a moment that could help another breathe easier because of your existence here on this planet?
Living simply so others may simply live.
Absolutely.
Right on. Question number 2. What do you willfully ignore?
I like this question, and I thought of it in two ways, because I recently did a post about what we choose to ignore, we inadvertently endorse. So the things that we are ignoring, we are endorsing by not speaking up, by not using our voice in a space. For me, for a long time, there was this little devil on my shoulder that would talk to me in a negative way. It's that negative self-talk that we all have, and it's this like self-fulfilling prophecy, almost in a negative capacity, that we all have, and I choose to ignore that. So that's something that I willfully ignore now, is the negative self-talk that existed in my head for such a long time in my life.
How did you get over that? Was there any, like, a specific method or a trick that you would use to break that pattern or recognize it?
Well, you've had on a couple Enlifted guys. I'm a student of Mark England. He runs the Enlifted program, and I went through the Enlifted certification course. And one of the things that you do is you name that little devil on your shoulder, and it's basically like, what is that negative self-talk that we have? So what is that negative self-talk saying to you? What has it got you to do in the past? And if you continue to look at this or listen to this negative self-talk, what do you have in store for yourself in the future? And it's really powerful to those that are listening to really think about what are the things that you're saying to yourself in a negative capacity? What are those things? Like, really thinking about them intentionally and then naming them. And if you continue to listen to those things, what's in store for you? So for me, what I did was I wrote them down, read them out loud. I read them out loud again. And then I started to decide, are these things accurate? Are these things true? If I continue to listen to them, I'm going to keep going down the same path that I had been, that was my trajectory for a long time in my life. So what I started to do was break down those things and start to say, you know what, I'm not going down this direction anymore. So I started to willfully ignore those negative things that I was saying to myself.
And in the process of writing them down, did you ever, like, edit them or go, like, reauthorize, or, like, make I don't know, kind of like a ceremony out of it almost?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. It's what we did was we had to write those things down, and then we had to make it worse. So we really needed to go deep down inside and really, like, peel back the layers of the things that had been getting in our way. And so that's what I did. I did several edits on that draft. And one thing that I did ceremoniously was I wrote it all down. I read it again, and then I burned it. It was like a ceremonial way for me to, like, okay, this is no longer going to impact me. This is no longer going to be who I am moving forward.
That's awesome. I've heard of the burning of paper with intentions on it before, and yeah, it's an awesome way to release the bad energy, the bad stuff. And like
And then when it comes up again, you're like, I already burned that. It's not, I've already gone through the process in a ceremonial way, and it's no longer exists in my head.
yeah, and you're using the fire element too, which to me kind of draws a line to a lot of what I've been reading in the Saint Germain series, and I'm on book number 4 or 3 right now. Hold on, book number 4, and anyway, it's a series of 20 books, and Saint Germain talks about using the violet flame to consume these, anything that's not in accordance with perfection, which these, devil on your shoulder, like these thoughts, these negative self-thinking patterns that we find ourselves in is, I would argue, like not a perfect thing, right? So his whole thing is to shatter what an advice that he gives during one discourse is to like quote unquote shatter and consume. You shatter the thought and use the flame to consume it. So
Right. I like that.
yeah, burning it is like, yeah, seeing that parallel is just so cool.
Yep.
All right, question number 3. What book has been most influential on your life and why?
Well, I have one that I would say had such a huge impact in my experience as an educator, and then another one recently. If after I get through this one, if you give me a second book, I'll throw it out there. But the first one is a book called Season of Life, and the author's name is Jeffrey Marks. And I read this book my first year as an assistant principal back in 2005, when I was really struggling in my professional life. I was overwhelmed in my experience as an assistant principal, as a new administrator. I spent a lot of my time in education, not only understanding the nuances around education, but I also had a minor in sociology, so group dynamics, especially with young men and the struggles that they had gone through. And recognizing in my very first year as an assistant principal, there were so many issues that I was dealing with the young men in the school. They were coming to school late, not coming to school at all. They were getting in trouble. They were getting into fights, getting tossed out of class, failing grades, you name it. And so I wanted to start some kind of a boys' social group that would help young men understand what it meant to be a young man in society at that time. And I did a ton of research, read a ton of books, and one book stuck out to me was called A Season of Life. And the book, written by Jeffrey Marks, was about a guy who was a ball boy for the Baltimore Colts in the 70s before they moved to Indianapolis, a football team. And the defensive end, the star defensive end on the team, his name was Joe Ehrman. And Joe was this larger than life character. He was never, the best player in the league, but he was the best defensive lineman on the team. And so he lived it up, drinking, drugs, women, and a gregarious guy, but he really lived the life of a professional football player at the time. And the book talks about how Joe, his younger brother, who he absolutely loved, his younger brother, whose name was Billy, was stricken with cancer and very quickly withered away and died in one of Joe's final years in the NFL. And Joe had this moment where he was beside himself, thinking like, I'm this big, strong, larger than life guy. Everybody loves me here. Yet I couldn't do anything to help my younger brother. And I've been living this life of false masculinity. My life was based on the ideas that if I was bigger, faster, stronger than the other players, like that meant that I was a better man. And he lived his life saying, if I can get more women, or, the hotter the women that I could get, that meant that I was a better man. And how much money I could make and my success and fame meant that I was a better man. And none of these things mattered for me to be a savior or helping my younger brother. So he had this moment where he recognized I had it all wrong. And reading that book, to me, I needed to take the ideals in that book and help the young men that I was serving as their administrator at the time and help them understand what masculinity meant. And so what I did was I started this Building Men group, and that was the premise of it. I asked the boys, what does it mean? What does a man mean to you? What is a man like? Tell me about him. And it was the same things that this guy, Joe Ehrman, believed in his book. Bigger, faster, stronger, the tougher kid, the one with the bigger muscles, the better athlete was a better man. The kids in high school and beyond that were getting the most girls, or the hotter girls, meant that they were a better man. And finally, the material goods, the accumulation of stuff, the things, the car, the house, the bank account, that meant that you were a better man. And I challenged them, thinking any one of those things can potentially be taken away from you, right? If you tear your rotator cuff and you're unable to throw a football anymore, or if you have some kind of an illness and you're unable to perform sexually anymore, or if you lose your job or the stock market crashes and you're unable to, financially support anymore, where are you if those are how you identify what it means to be a man? And this book served for me as a model to help young men understand what masculinity is. And what we started to do was really create a new definition of what it meant to be a man. And it was around intrinsically motivated things. It was around your character, your integrity, your self-discipline, you being accountable for your own actions, for your level of service toward other people, your empathy, your compassion. And so this book really served to me as this guidepost for what I wanted to do with the Building Men program. And then more recently, on my, how old am I now? I'm going to be 46, my 44th birthday, I got the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And that book really turned my life in another direction as well, with the idea of the personal legend and like the idea of alchemy, like helping people become a better and stronger version of who they could potentially be. And now it's my goal every year on my birthday, I will read that book from cover to cover. So 2 years in a row I've done it, and I will continue to do so on my birthday every year, is read The Alchemist, wake up early and read that book from cover to cover.
Yeah, The Alchemist has been a relatively popular answer on the show. We do keep an ongoing catalog of the question 3 book answers on the website. And but we have not had The Season of Life by Jeffrey Marks. So that'll be a new one that I'll add, and I'll definitely be looking into that too. And I like that this book inspired you to inspire change in other young adults, and doing so through like a community setting, right? Didn't really sound like anybody was lone wolfing it, right? It was within this community of building men, right? That you were able to pass on these messages and emphasize what masculinity really is, as opposed to just lone wolfing it.
Right. Absolutely. And this idea, I mean, you still see it out there right now. It's like a, diametrically opposed thing that's going on right now. I mean, you have some of the guys out there that are walking around with axes and like, you got to kill the boar and, drink the blood and eat the testicles and, come home and, with your shotgun over your shoulder and tell your wife to have the dinner on the table with your glass of whiskey. And so there's that side of it, all the way to the other side where there's guys running around holding their wife's purse and, saying happy wife, happy life, and, walking around with a purse with a dog with a purple sweater following their wife around. It's neither one of those things, in my opinion. It's the sweet spot in the middle where you could be strong and steadfast and really hold to your convictions, but also be able to lean into your emotions and be vulnerable and share the things that are going on. And that's what I tried to normalize with these young men. And it was to me, it was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And I will continue to do it until there's not an audience for it anymore.
But you're not a principal now, are you?
I'm not. I left public education in 2019 after almost 20 years in education. A lot of it was around just where it was heading to. I mean, I believe wholeheartedly in creating strong communities and taking opportunities to. It's more important to know the kids than to know the content or know the curriculum. And education became this cookie cutter standardized model where I was told pretty much like, no more of these boys groups. You're not allowed to do this anymore. And that's when I said, well, then I will find another way in this world, because it doesn't align with what my beliefs on education are anymore.
That's crazy. Because, I mean, that is really where, some of our greatest technology came from kids that were raised in farmhouses by, not super highly educated people. And you taught to the kids' interests. So, that's what got, us to the moon with NASA and scientists and, early engineering. And nowadays, it's not fostered.
Absolutely agree with that. And it's the men that I've talked to on the podcast, many of them were not the typical good students. They were the ones that were getting C's and D's because they didn't agree, or they had beliefs contrary to what the curriculum was saying, or they were more the outside of the box, rambunctious kids. And young men are not, we're not made to be put into rows and told to sit down and shut up and raise your hand and walk in line and don't run and wait your turn, right? So for a lot of the young men who are out there now changing the world with, these unbelievable ideas and this, really steadfast work ethic, they were not the same kids that were getting straight A's in school, most of them.
Question number 4. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it's important?
This is definitely a new rule for me, and it's something that I said as an administrator for a long time, and even to my kids, but I didn't always live up to it, and it is to tell the truth, to be 100% authentic in your word. Your word is your bond. Your word is your power. So if you're going to say something, you need to be able to stand like a pillar behind what you say. And I say that because for a long time I was in this nice guy way, this nice guy syndrome, and I was a people pleaser and a seeker of approval for more than a decade of my life, where I was so worried about what people thought about me. I was so worried about how I looked, especially my profession. It needed to look, sound, and feel a certain way. So when I mentioned like the house on the hill, the car, those things were really important to me for a long time. And I did my best to not make waves. So while it wasn't like I was blatantly, being dishonest. I would say things that went around the truth. Like I would glad hand, and I would I manipulated a little bit, and it wasn't authentic. And I hated myself for a long period of time because of that. And I went through like this big renaissance a couple of years ago when I left education. It was actually during the year after, during COVID. I could get into it at a later point too, but had this really big turning point in my life. And I just basically made a deal with myself. I will never, I'm going to be radically honest and authentic with everything. And so if you're asking me a question about something, I'm going to shoot you straight. And if it rubs people the wrong way, then that's on them. Now, it worked for such a long time. I felt like if I said something and someone didn't like what I said, I would have to adjust it or change it slightly to make it a little bit softer. And I don't live like that anymore. So that's a rule moving forward that I do not break.
So how then did that play into your like transition out of the educational world into where you find yourself today then?
So 2019, when I left education, I started working as a consultant and a coach for school districts. At the time I was married, and I was, for a year, it went all right. And fast forward to the spring of 2020, in my personal life, I was going through a separation, which led into a divorce. And during COVID, it was a spot where, again, leaving education, schools shut down. And now me working as a consultant and a coach in school districts, schools weren't open. And I was making my money as an entrepreneur, going in and doing workshops and teaching teachers and doing professional development and motivational speeches, and schools were not open. So I went from making a really safe, good six-figure salary with a pension, not that far off, with full benefits, to making nothing in the middle of a divorce where I was pretty much broke with 3 kids going through a divorce. And it was a really, really low spot in my life. And I remember during that time initially, I was eating like, I put on a ton of weight, very depressed. I was drinking every day, and not drinking like, hey, this will be fun, I'll have a couple beers. Like I was drinking in a dark way. And I would wake up in the morning and be like, I want to get up out of bed. And I remember taking a drive, again in Central Jersey. No one was out. It was during that, it looked like Walking Dead time frame where there was no one out on the road. And I was driving in my car, bawling my eyes out, just like, what did I do? I can't believe, like, I have 3 kids. What is my future? What is next for me? And I pull off to the side of the road, and a song comes on. And it's a song that I heard probably 1,000 times before. I worked with my father, who was a painter, and he would listen to classic rock, and I was a fan of classic rock. And there was a song by the Eagles. The song was Already Gone. And I heard the song so many times before, but I never really listened to it. It was one of those situations. There's a line in the song that goes, so oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and we never even know we have the key. And at that moment, I heard that line and I listened to it about 30 times over and over and over again. And I recognized if I'm going to make a change in my life, I have it in me. Like I have the ability inside of me to make this change. And one of the things that I did, like again, bawling my eyes out, I went home and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was just like brutally honest with myself about, who I was and who I wanted to be. And basically I said, like, as I'm looking at this person staring back for me, I will never, ever lie to you again, to the person staring back. And I won't lie to anybody else again. So that was like the moment that the change happened during that time.
That's an awesome story. When you heard that song on the radio by the Eagles, did you feel like your dad with you? Could you feel his presence at all, or did it just remind you of him in general? Or
Well, it's interesting. I could get into that as well because a lot of what I mentioned with the story about Jeffrey Marks and Joe Ehrman, like the things that my father was telling me about masculinity were those things. Like, you need to be a better athlete. Like, if I did well in sports, I received love from my father. If I didn't, if I say I was pitching and I walked 3 batters in a row or something like that, I would get an earful on the way home. And it was one of those relationships. So the things that he believed in are now contrary to what I believe, masculinity means. So I did have a challenging upbringing, a couple of really significant situations with my father growing up, which is another reason why I am drawn to what I'm doing now with Building Men. But as far as the song, music was always something that connected us. So I can't say in that specific moment that I thought about my father. I more thought about the lyrics, that line in particular that I heard so many times but never listened to, and I finally listened to those words and they sunk into like deep inside of me. But since then, as I listen to the song, I do know that the relationship that I have with my father again has gotten significantly better over the years, and a lot of it is due to music. So now when I listen to the song, he does come to my mind as I hear it again and again.
awesome. Question number 5. If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
It would be my brother. He's my best friend. He'd say I need to work on my glutes. I need to squat more. I have like skinnier legs, so he'd say that. But if it was like something more impactful, it would be to put myself out there a little bit more. He would say that I need to have more confidence in my message, to put it out there more on social media, to just feel like this message will resonate. You just have to put in the reps and put it out there and have the confidence in your voice more than you do.
So in specifically in regards to podcast, and
It's more so like when I'm on the podcast and I'm riffing with somebody, I don't tamp down at all. There's no filter whatsoever. But with social media, if I'm trying to put out a message, I'm so critical of myself where I'll start recording it and I won't like the way it sounds and I'll delete it and I'll try to do it again and I'll do it again. Like it's one of those things, this block that I have. So it's when I'm talking to people on the podcast, I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to do is have conversations because it's just natural and it just flows. When I feel like it has to look a certain way, when I feel like it's like I'm holding a camera in front of my face and I'm not talking to another person, there's just something that doesn't feel authentic about it. And it's really challenging for me. And my brother's, he's like, you got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. Put in the reps and pretend like you are talking to one person, even though you're holding a phone in front of your face.
yeah, it is weird forming these skills, especially in the era of podcasting, when it's weird and cool at the same time because it's so available to everybody that anybody can do it. But then
Right.
it's challenging because in order to be good at it and successful, it really is the reps that count. Like, you got to put in the time, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, I go back and I listen to the beginning podcasts now, and the first one was, coincidentally enough, I called it The Decision. And as I was going through that time, I mentioned I changed everything. Like, I had that talk in the mirror and I decided I'm going to start right now and change everything. So I, pretty much cut out drinking. I wound up going on a strict fitness program. My nutrition was on point. I was meditating and journaling. Like, I really went so far in the other direction than where I was. I went up dropping like 40 pounds over the course of the next 3 months. At the time when I was going through that, I couldn't do one pull up. Like I could not get myself up one time. To going in the next couple months, I was able to do a Murph where I could do 100 pull ups, 200 push ups, 300 squats, the mile run. Like I was able to do that after a couple months. So I really, really turned it around. But to me, the thing was the goal that I had set was by July 4th to start a podcast. And I had no idea how to do a podcast. I really had no idea whatsoever. I just said, I need to get this message of building men out. What can I do? I can't write a book in a month, but I could figure out how to start a podcast. So ready, fire, aim, I got it going and taught myself how to do it. So the first episode was called The Decision, and recognizing I really like this. I really, really enjoy it. And over the course of time, getting better at having conversations. And to me, one of the biggest things was just that tell the truth thing, was just being authentic, just being like so raw and real and putting it out there to people that are listening. And I think that made the biggest difference in the world, was just that piece of it.
Question number 6. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
For me, I need to get outside. I started doing this within the last 6 months or so, where when I wake up in the morning, I don't go to my phone. I don't turn on the TV. I drink a glass of water and I get outside and I get the sun on my face and I go for a 30-minute walk. And during that walk, I'm just in my head, I'm thinking, I'm appreciating the fact that I'm breathing. I'm appreciating what I'm seeing. And as I'm doing that, it gets about 10 minutes into where I can clear my mind of any of the things that are going on, the talk that's going on in my head. And that's when I can start getting creative. And that's when I'm like, I really connect with like the deeper inner peace in myself, where I find this like creative spirit that that I just had stifled down just by consuming what everyone else had put out there in my face. So it's such a great practice for people that are listening. When you wake up in the morning, don't grab your phone. Put your phone someplace else, hit the alarm, and get up a half hour earlier, take a drink of water, and get outside. And it's just something with the sunlight being on your face in the morning, rather than getting that blue light from your phone or from the screen. It's such a game changer for me.
Absolutely. The being outside, especially in the morning, is something that is, I've been able to do more so that I'm working from home now at the at the end of 2019 into 2020, when the whole craziness started to happen. We got sent home, and working from home has enabled me to kind of be outside more in general, because you're not stuck inside of an office building for 8 to 10 hours a day or whatever. So, which is nice.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, there's something specifically about being in the morning air, like the morning light. I'm sure that there's some kind of Japanese word for it. I think they have like 50 different words for light, kind of like how the Inuits have like 50 different words for snow.
Yeah, it's interesting because like you think about, like, people love sunset chasing, right? To me, there's just something about the sunrise that just hits a little bit differently. I mean, it just gives you, the sun rising is like an opportunity. It's a brand new day, and those, everyone can watch the sunset, but to watch a sunrise, like it takes like an intentionality behind it to get up before the sun is up. Like there's just something to that to me, and just seeing the colors as they're rising in the sky and just the potential for the day. I absolutely love it, and it's something that now that it's just become part of my routine. And when I start my day outside with the sun, those are just every day. Every time I do that, it's a better day than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. I get that too. Working from home, being able to do that, it's harder in the winter because like you wake up and then, at least where I am, like the sun doesn't get up. It can not get up, not currently at this time of the year, but later on when it's snowy and cold and dark, like you'll be up for 2-3 hours before the sun
Right.
come up. So,
Yep.
but even then, it's still like cool to go outside and then really start to, I don't know, start your day, buckle down or whatever, right?
100% agree with that.
Question number 7. What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
For embarrassing, it's funny. When I was a principal, I would intentionally put myself into embarrassing situations for the benefit of the kids. So I would, like, I was the guy. I did, if you've ever seen the movie, I did the Napoleon Dynamite dance in front of the kids in my school. Like I had the president of the student council come out, and she said, now please enjoy a skit by Pedro Sanchez. And then I walk out wearing the Vote for Pedro shirt, the moon boots. I had an afro and glasses on, and I nailed that damn Napoleon Dynamite dance in front of the kids. Like it erupted. I mean, it was super embarrassing. I was super nervous to do it, but I would do things like that. One, to build community with the kids, and to let them know, like, listen, it's okay to put yourself out there. I mean, I've done the Thriller dance, Michael Jackson Thriller dance. I wasn't as good as that one. He's like, the guy's just a master dancer. But I sang like Taylor Swift and Carly Rae Jepsen, Call Me Maybe, in front of the kids. So I would put myself into embarrassing situations frequently. And the more that I did that, the more that I recognize, don't take yourself so seriously. And it's actually good advice as I go back to the one question about, what my best friend would say, the piece of advice. Like, I need to get out of my own way and just put myself out there, because who cares anyway, right? As far as like humbling experience for me, it was when I had mentioned before, not like when I had left being a principal and I was in that spot for a couple months, I did try to get back into the education world. So I was putting out resumes left and right, and it had come easy to me before that. I mean, if I went for a job, I think I applied for 4 jobs in education, and I got every job. I was successful at every time that I went for a position. So there was this bursting of my own ego in my bubble during that time, because I tried to get back into schools, and I was basically like an educational social pariah, where I had just left education and I was not a marketable commodity now. People are like, wait, you left a year ago, now you want back in during COVID? Sorry, Charlie, like that's not going to happen now. So for me, it was very, very humbling, and it definitely helped me check myself and really refocus what I needed to be doing in the future. So a little bit about how I put myself in embarrassing situations, and also those humbling situations that really, knocked me down a peg and helped me like take another deep look in the mirror to say, okay, what do you need to be doing in the future?
Yeah, it gave you like a second, like forced you to like respect like what your other options are. I think a lot of people found themselves in that situation after things kind of turned over, quote unquote, after the not going back to whatever was normal before, right? There's other opportunities or other avenues that opened up because of what happened, right?
Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's so cool to find the silver linings and stuff that, in the bad situations, and then watch it grow into like what, because I started around that time too, with this show. The show got started before I came around, but it sounds like our timelines kind of match up, and
Yeah.
things started taking off around when stuff started getting weird.
And the interesting thing is too, when you're going through that experience, to have the ability to take a step back and recognize that what you're going through right now, like this will serve to teach you a lesson or help you find the path that you need to go on. So there are moments where we feel like, woe is me, I can't believe I'm going through this, but you're going through that because you need to go through that to get to where you need to be. And like, as I look back, and that's the tricky part, is to be able to put yourself into that future place and be like, one day I'm going to look back on this moment that really sucks right now and recognize that I needed to go through this pain, this experience, this disappointment to get to where I am right now. And now what I attempt to do in situations like that is, as things come up that initially disappoint me, I'm like, okay, this is now teaching me a lesson, or this is the obstacle that I need to climb in this situation, because the thing that's waiting on the other side, I needed to climb this obstacle right now. Like, I think back and I was so disappointed. I applied for like 13 or 14 different principal jobs at that time. And I think I got 2 or 3 interviews and never got called back again. And I thought, I can't believe this. I can't believe this is happening to me right now. And it was all happening for me, because if I was if I accepted one of those positions, my life and so many people that I've come into contact with, this ripple effect over the past 2 or 3 years lives would have been so much different. Even my kids' lives would have been so much. It's like remarkable to think about in that capacity.
Yeah, especially neat being able to look back like after we've gone through it and just to see, even though like they were tough times or bad whatever experiences that we went through in our past, it does make us who we are today. And like what's like even what I tell myself when some of the trials or whatever or tribulations, right? Maybe overstatement. But yeah, going through adversity, right? Just having the wherewithal to remind yourself that this too shall pass, and someday it's just going to make a good story to tell, right?
Yep.
So even though things look bad now, there will be a point where you can look back at this and it will pass, right?
Absolutely.
Question number 8. What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it if you have?
It's funny. When I first saw this question, I was like, how do you go about answering this question? What is your greatest fear? I like if I look back, and I mentioned before the enlifted thing with a little devil on your shoulder. Like I play this game when there's something in front of me. It's, I don't know if it's a sadistic game or not, but when there's something in front of me like that's bothering me, I'm like, but why? Like why is that bothering me? So whatever it is, and I try to go a layer deeper. So say it's I didn't get this job. Why does that bother me so much? Well, because I won't be able to financially support my kids. Well, why does that bother me? Well, because what if, I can't financially support and we're destitute? Well, then why? Like you just keep going down layer and layer to see like what is the root cause of whatever it is. And I think for me, like the biggest fear that I have is abandonment. It like as I go back, like the fear, and I trace things back to things that are in front of me that really get to me, it comes down to abandonment. And if you don't mind, I'll share a quick story. I mentioned my father, the dynamic with my father when you brought up the song, and my father, I mentioned with sports, like it was very much about sports. He coached my sports teams, and he was like a man's man, like that's just the way he presented himself, coached my teams, and he was like this tough guy too. And that was not how I was when I was growing up. It wasn't like I wasn't confrontational at all. And I remember there were these 3 kids that lived up the street from me that I was friendly with. And it was up until my 6th grade year, during the spring of my 6th grade year, going back to, I think it was 1989. And I made the middle school baseball team. And these 3 boys that I was friends with, they were 2 years older. They were 8th graders. They got cut. And when they got cut from the baseball team, they blamed me for it. It was like my issue that they got cut from the team because I made it as a 6th grade student, which was pretty unheard of at the time, a 6th grader making the baseball team. And so they started picking on me. They started making fun of me, the way that I looked, the way that I dressed. They would flick my ear on the bus, throw things at me. Then they would start tripping me in the hallway, push me into lockers. And then they would, kick me and it became more physical in nature. And I remember that just the fear associated with school and how, from class to class, I knew where these 3 kids were all the time because I was deathly afraid of getting beat up by these kids. And there were a couple times after the school day was over on the bus ride home, like they would chase me from the bus to my house. And there were times that they would kick my legs out and I got, punched and kicked. And it was like pretty bad. Never told my father about it. There was one day that we were driving home from baseball practice. We drive past the boys' houses and they're all outside playing basketball and they all stick up their middle finger and they yell out F you as loud as they can. I remember the way that my father looked at me and he drove into the driveway and he's like, what the hell's going on here? I thought you were friends with these kids. And I didn't say anything. I, got choked up a little bit and he goes, wait inside. I'll be right back. So he goes up and he talks to these 3 boys. 10, 15 minutes later, he comes back into the house. And I remember I was sitting in my room, like petrified of what was about to happen. And he goes, let's go. I arranged for you to fight this kid, Frankie, one-on-one. Let's go. You're going to go fight him. And I didn't move. And I was frozen. And he goes, let's go. You're going to go kick his ass. I arranged for you to fight this kid one-on-one. Let's go right now. And I didn't move. I started crying. And he looks at me and goes, they were right. You are a punk. And he walks out of my room. And now I'm like, my father was my hero up until that point. And I broke down in tears. And then my mother comes into the room and she goes, you just lost your best friend, your father. And she walks out of the room. And for like a month, guys, my father didn't even talk to me for a month. So for me, in my head, there was this idea of I stood my ground by not going and fighting. Like I didn't just do what he told me to do because I was scared. And I felt like I was abandoned emotionally for a long period of time. So now, and like that whole thing I talked to you before about, like integrity, looking in the mirror, the people pleasing thing, it started to surface at that point because I felt like I couldn't have this conflict anymore. I needed to do what I had to do to make people happy because I never wanted to feel like this again. So for me, like the biggest fear was the fear of abandonment. As far as overcoming it, I'm still on that journey right now. Even my current relationship right now, it's, as things come up there, like that fear does surface again. And it's just like going back and reminding myself. And what I really needed to do through coaching and therapy was to go back and tell that 12-year-old Dennis, like, listen, kid, it's okay that you're scared. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel vulnerable. Like, this is not about you. This is about your father's baggage right now. Like, you need to, give yourself some grace here and be able to look yourself in the mirror and love yourself. So, as far as if I overcame it or not, I'm still on that journey right now, guys.
Yeah, it's a hero's journey, right? Life is a process. So absolutely. And I love that to get to that point, though, you said that you had to play the why game, right? Keep asking yourself
Yep.
why until you drilled down, until you got all the way back to the first instance, like your childhood. Like, is that, like, how far, when you're helping other people through this or talking about it, like how far back how far back is far enough in your childhood to pinpoint something and to get to the root? Like, how do you help facilitate that, help someone along?
Right. And then that's the tough piece. And that's the hard work to go through. Like, people think, you're like a sissy to show emotion and be vulnerable. It's way tougher to do that because that's stuff that existing down there at the root. That's where the issue is, right? Kids are not born typically anxious. They're not born as people pleasers. They're not born, in that way. Like, some event will typically happen where it starts to change the way that their brains are wired. I do a lot of work around trauma-informed teaching and adverse childhood experiences, and kids that go through experiences during their 0 to 18 years old that rewires their brain. Like in the neuroscience of their brain, the chemistry of their brain is rewired when they go through traumatic experiences. So what I help people do is start telling me a story about something that's happened and talk to me about this emotion. Like, all right, what are you feeling? Where do you feel it? I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my stomach. I feel it in my head. When was the first time you remember feeling that way? And then, they'll start thinking back, like, when was the first time that I felt this feeling right now? And they'll dig back and they'll tell me a story and I'll have them write it down. Let's go through this, right? And then after that, like, do you remember a time previous to that? And sometimes it takes them a couple weeks, even a couple months to get back to that spot. But you need to get to the root of whatever it is and then come to terms with that story. So for me, like, I needed to go through that entire story. I wrote out that story in like explicit detail, like tears streaming from my face as a 45-year-old man writing that story. And then what I did was I read the story out loud, and then I got some space and I took a couple deep breaths through the story. Now I could tell that story without much emotional attachment to it, because I recognize that, like, that story is not me. I was a part of that story, but that is not who I am anymore. So, and that's what I do when I work with people, is help them realize, you might have been a part of whatever that happened, but that does not define who you are as a person now or moving forward.
Yeah, so it's like helping them overcome an identity crisis.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Super cool. I like that the analogy of rewiring the brain too is like you're reprogramming the set of instructions that your little computer CPU brain runs on, to make the analogy of like our brains are transceivers, and that it matters like what we put into them. So if we can rewrite the input of this horrible story way back when, then we can reprogram ourselves to think like in a different way, a different method in the future.
Absolutely. And that's the coolest thing that I've recognized, is that, like, your memories are fluid. Like, you can go back in and rewrite the script of your memories even. And the thing is, we don't remember like the exact experience. What we remember is the last time that we recalled the experience. Like, as we go through the entire recollection of that experience from start to finish, we recalled that. So when I tell the story again, I'll remember telling this version of the story, like the picture that I painted in my head. So if I start to adjust things a little bit, I'll give you an example. Like, there can be a traumatic situation. Like my first year teaching was 2001. My first day on my third day on the job was 9/11 of 2001 in Central Jersey. So I was like pervasively impacted by 9/11. And then the research that I've done when they ask people that were there, like eyewitnesses, to retell the story, so you could, 10 people in the same spot had very different ideas of what happened. And as they continually asked these people year after year after year, their memories had changed based on how they told the story the last time, which is totally fascinating to me. So it gives me the evidence that if you can retell that story in a different way and start to put yourself as like, listen, I was a 6-year-old kid or a 6th grade kid. I was a strong kid there. There were some circumstances that happened in my life that I wasn't ready to handle. Like trauma is something at the time we're not capable of handling the emotion, the experience and the emotion attached to whatever's going on. We're not capable of handling that. So that's why it impacts us in a certain way. So now I can go back and say, you know what, as a 6th grade kid, you know what, maybe you weren't ready for it, but now you're ready for it. And guess what? This is what should have happened. This is what you needed to hear from your father. Hey kid, I know you're scared right now. These kids are assholes to you right now. How about I take you in the basement? I teach you how to box. And then just in case anything ever happens, you're able to defend yourself. Like that's what I needed to hear from my father. And so I was able to forgive him for that situation. Like I was able to have a conversation with him, and he was doing the best that he knew how to do at the time. Like he experienced his own trauma from his upbringing, from his childhood. And so did my mother. And they thought that that's what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to, raise this boy who wanted to go fight kids that were 2 years older than him. But that was the best that they knew how to do at that time. So to be able to go back and rewrite that script in my head, it doesn't impact me like it used to impact me. And that's the work that I do with people now, is help them rewrite those stories.
Yeah, it's super, super, super cool. It's something I like to call word magic now. I think we've had enough of Mark England's
Oh yeah.
It's just abracadabra, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. The guys you've had on have been rock stars. They're all rock stars, those guys.
All right. Question number 9. What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
For me, it's waking up every day and being able to look at myself in the mirror and recognize like this responsibility that I have to be the best man that I can be, not only for my children, who are just like, when you talk about inspiration and motivation, I mean, my kids are just, they are like, they own this part of my soul that I need to be the best man that I can possibly be for them, for those young men that are, following along with what I'm doing, and that I'm coaching and mentoring through Building Men, and that I continue to, I'm still talking to some guys that are in their late 20s that were in Building Men back in, 2005, 2006. So what am I doing to live my life to honor that responsibility that I have, and every day, just really being conscious of that, and honoring that idea that it's this drive that I have to further this mission. It's so important that we're having these conversations right now, and I appreciate you guys for opening up this space for me to share my story and to talk about it, because that's what we need to do. We need to collectively understand this responsibility that we have, especially for the next generation of young men who are listening to this.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. This is something that drew me to 13 Questions. Was I knew that I recognized the importance of having these conversations and being able to, memorialize them on the interweb, right? Because I didn't really see these things being talked about, and as a listener, like I was, I'd like to say fairly well versed in the podcast world in the last decade or so. So when Darren said that the 13 Questions was it needed some help or whatever in the Discord chat one day on the Grammarica community, I volunteered, and yeah, it's been a blast so far. So yeah, I mean it speaks to me and it resonates with me. So
I appreciate that, definitely.
all right, question number 10. Who are or were your role models and why?
When I started out in education, we were assigned a mentor as a first-year administrator, And the guy that was assigned to me was this guy. His name was Jack Heater. He was a principal in Central New Jersey for 30 some odd years. And he was this larger than life character, this definitely like a stoic. And he always challenged me to be able to look at myself in the mirror. Like that was, he gave me this poem. It's called "The Man in the Glass." And for those of you listening, I would definitely encourage you to Google it. The last stanza in "The Man in the Glass" is, "You may fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass." And that always resonated with me in the work that I did with the young men as well. Like, you can get away with those little things, the bullshit here and there, but for example, like what you're doing. And the man in the glass, like that's just this thing that's been this constant theme in my life, being able to look at yourself in the mirror. So Jack was this guy who brought this idea to me. And he was one who I heard him use the quote, "Go one step further than you thought you could go." And that was something that I took with me in education when I talk to kids, by helping them understand, again, going back to the first thing with the 60 seconds worth of distance run, like going that step further than you thought, like that self-limiting belief. If you can go one step further than you thought, now you have a new baseline. And if you go one step further than you thought, you have a new baseline, and you continue to do that and stack wins. There's nothing that you can't accomplish then. So Jack was just this guy that brought those ideas to me. And he's someone that, he was this father figure that I had in my life when my father did not fill a lot of those emotional roles that I really needed in my life. He was that guy for me. And then, like, on a broader picture, I have like guys like Tony Robbins, Jordan Peterson. I mean, I absolutely love Jordan Peterson. I can't get enough. I'm listening to the Beyond Chaos now. I'm listening to the audiobook. I've read the book. I'm fascinated by that guy and the way that he thinks.
I appreciate that your friend used the quote, "Go one step further than you thought you could go," because that to me speaks to like trajectory based thinking, like, and especially, I mean, it's very I don't know, apropos, or is it the right words or not, but especially when physical acts, right, like
Yes.
running or like doing push-ups, or trying to be even more healthier if you want to expand it, and like eating or whatever. But this trajectory based thinking, like maybe if you're not healthy and you want to get healthier, maybe you do 10 push-ups today, and then tomorrow you do
11. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Ed Milet does think something. It's called like one more rep or something like that. He just came out with a book, but it's how I end every single podcast episode. I thank the guest. I talk about our sponsors on the podcast, and I say, all right, to the Building Men audience, go one step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time. Oh, I'm Building Men. And that's how I end every single episode. It just, that phrase has stuck with me so deeply. And it could be anything. It could be, like you mentioned, it could be a physical thing, but it could be, putting yourself out there, putting a resume out there, or asking a girl out on a date, or whatever. Like, just this, like going that one bit further than you thought you were capable of. It just sets a new baseline in your mind, and you're like, now your capacity to reach, it's expanded. And then, you keep stacking that time after time. You're a totally different person than you were a year ago.
Yeah, and it speaks to now is the perfect time to start doing that. Anytime, like no matter when. I know we're recording this at a specific date and time in this realm, but now, like the eternal now, is absolutely the best time to start this at any moment. Is our trajectory based thinking, because it's progress based thinking, right? And that makes us feel good, right? Which is good, right?
Absolutely.
Question number 11. What quality do you most admire in a woman?
Yeah, to narrow it down to one, I would say it would be, to pick one out, it would be this idea of like a deep emotional understanding of who she is in pursuit of her purpose. To me, that's like to have your for a woman to have her idea of like who she is, and who like what her purpose is in the world. It was something that attracted me to my girlfriend. Now she's a labor and delivery nurse, and she wants to help people, and she's going back for her master's to get her psych mental health nurse practitioner master's degree because she wants to start a practice to help people that are going through challenging situations. And I just admire that so much, like this deep commitment to like a purpose. There's a million things that attract me to her, that qualities that I love about her, but that I would say would be the number one thing.
That sounds like drive, like being aware of, like having perspective of who she is within the whole context of an end goal in mind. I mean, yeah, it sounds like someone who's got their head screwed on straight, right?
Yeah, and then being able to be like just emotionally aware of who she is, and like and supporting me in my mission, and understanding, like, both of us have been divorced, so being able to recognize, like, we're there to support each other as we experience new situations that might tug on triggers from our past, and not taking those things personally, like being there to support one another during that process, but the whole time, like, still being cognizant of, like, these situations will help us propel us into our futures together. It's a deep thing. I mean, it's the whole thing with relationship dynamics, especially after, like, in a post-divorce relationship. It's been such a game changer for me to recognize, like, who I am as a man and who I am as a partner as well. I mean, I've learned more about relationship dynamics in the last 2 years than I knew in the previous 43 of my life. It's been such a game changer for me. And again, one of those things when I went back to, the rule never break, is just to tell the truth, like being totally, like, blatantly honest with everything that's going on. It's been such a game changer.
Question number 12. What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Well, as far as that I've done, I mean, definitely, like, leaving my profession and my marriage within a very short period of time. And basically I felt like Tom Hanks in Castaway, when I was, like, going up over the waves with Wilson on the raft with me. Like, I have no freaking clue what is out here. I'm going to go, and because I need to get out of this box that I'm in right now. So for me to do that, I as I look back on it, 10 years ago, I don't think I would have had the courage to do that. I would have played it safe. So for me, like, that was the thing that I went through personally. Something that I've seen, or it was actually a guy that I had on the podcast. His name is Nick Santanastasso. He's a Jersey guy he's in the Tony Robbins world right now. And Nick was born with a syndrome called Hanhart syndrome. And Nick was born with no legs, was born with one arm and one finger on his one arm. And basically, like, this guy he's just walking courage. He is one of the most inspirational human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And I'm just in awe of how he handles himself, and how he uses his experience to motivate other people. And as far as the most courageous thing I've seen done, it was the story that he told on the podcast. We had him on. It was in the early January timeframe when we talked to Nick, and he talked about being in high school, and he wanted to wrestle, and he has no legs, one arm, one finger, and he actually had half of an arm on the other arm. So he tried out for the wrestling team, and he was having a lot of pain in the one arm that didn't have the hand on it or the finger on it. And the doctors are like, listen, the bone is about to protrude through the skin. They're like, you can't wrestle anymore. Like, you're done. You can't do it. And to him, he wanted to be a part of the community, wanted to be a part of the team. And so he went to his parents and he said, I want you to cut off that arm. I want you to amputate it. Because if you amputate that arm, then I could wrestle. Then I won't have the issue anymore. And the parents were like, you got to be kidding me, Nick. Like, you only have you only have a stump there. Like, you're going to cut that off now? And he goes, yeah, I want to wrestle. And so he had a selective amputation on that half of an arm, so we can go out and wrestle in high school with the wrestling team. And to me, like, to make that decision is, I mean, you hear about Ronnie Lott having his pinky amputated during the halftime of a Niners Raiders game in 1985 or something like that. And that sounded so courageous. But this is a guy who has only one arm and a little stump there, and he got it amputated so he could wrestle. To me, oh my God, that is the most courageous thing I've ever heard someone do in their entire life.
Yeah, that gave me chills. Listen,
Yep.
that's wow. That is. Mhm.
Hey, sounds like a badass.
Oh my god! I mean, I could let you guys know what episode that was. It was again, it was like back in the January timeframe that Nick came onto the podcast. But you got to follow along with him on Instagram. He is just one of the most unbelievable people, and just the way that he speaks, it's so motivational. He's just a great dude. It was January 7th. He was on Building Men podcast. It was episode 109. It was called Success Oriented with Nick Santanastasso. Definitely worth a listen. And it was a funny episode too. And he's a great guy. I mean, he's one of those guys, he just puts it all out there. And it's funny because when we're talking to him, and again, I'm just like radically authentic in my conversations on the podcast. I'm like, I'm going to throw it out there to you, Nick. I said, listen, I watch you on Instagram. Like, you're really motivational, but you're also like, you're jumping around on skateboards. You're on, you're doing like backflips, you're bodybuilding, you're doing gymnastic stuff. You're on surfboards. I was like, Nick, doesn't that hurt your balls because you don't have any legs? he's like, dude, I really appreciate you asking me that question. He goes, here's why. He goes, I go on podcasts and I do interviews. He goes, people are afraid to treat me like a regular guy. They're afraid to treat me like another dude. He's like, I'm just a regular guy. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, here's the thing. He's like, I actually have these little stumps on my legs too. And he goes, and I wear compression shorts and I pull up my package a little bit. So no, it doesn't hurt my balls when I go on skateboards and stuff. But he appreciated me asking that question because I wasn't like handling it with kid gloves or not treating him like he's another dude. So to me, that was a turning point on the podcast when I had this guy who has more than 500,000 followers, and he's a motivational speaker on stage with Tony Robbins, and he's met The Rock, and I just put it out there and asked a question, and he absolutely loved it. So for me, like, that guy is like one of the top people out there for me.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I will definitely be checking out that episode on your podcast, and links will be in the show notes to your show, listeners. So ease of access, definitely go check that out too. But that does bring us to the capstone question number 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Wow, yeah, this is what I do my work around, right? I mentioned before the dichotomy between, both sides of like what you're seeing with men out there right now, all the way in one side where you have that red pill, men going their own way, all the way to the other side, the happy wife, happy life. And I guess the best definition I've come up with is, I'll go with what I teach my son, right? That speaks more to it than anything else is to be steadfast and unwavering with your word. Like truly treat your word as your bond. Like if you say something, then do it. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. Like use your word as your anchor. Be fiercely authentic. If someone doesn't like who you are, that's their shit 100%. And again, this is coming from my experience, everything that I've done wrong in my life, trying to like change to make people like me. And it's the wrong path to be on. So be that, like, a fiercely authentic person that is not afraid to just be themselves. Put yourself out there. And if people don't like you, that is 100% on them. I think that, you need to be empathic. You need to like put yourself in other people's shoes and have the courage. And it really, really takes courage and strength to be vulnerable. If I were to talk to you guys 3 years ago, 0% chance. I mean, one, I probably wouldn't have had me on the podcast. I wasn't, interesting in any way back then. I was a principal who just, went through the motions, but I wouldn't have shared these stories. I would have been so nervous to talk about anything that I talked about today because I would be worried about how I would be perceived by your audience and what if people think this, that, or the other. I'm okay with being vulnerable now. I'm okay with putting it out there and saying, like, listen, these are some mistakes that I made. These are some things that I learned from those mistakes, and I'm going to continue to make mistakes. That's part of being a human being, is making mistakes, but I will learn from those mistakes, and I will do my damnedest to not make those mistakes again. And then even further to help young men that could be going through something similar not make those mistakes as they're moving forward. So I definitely see that as part of my vision for the future, my vision for masculinity and what it means to be a man in today's world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Isn't it fun too? Not being authentic and not worrying what other people think,
I had a guy on the podcast recently, guys. His name was Nick Alfano, and this was a guy who he's gone through hell and back with in his personal life. And he said the most powerful dude in the room is the guy that has nothing to hide. You know, when you're not worried about what other people think, or you're not like, well, what did I tell this person, or what did I say to that person? Like, that's the most powerful dude in the room. Like, when you're putting shit out there, you have nothing to hide. That's a powerful guy right there.
Absolutely. He allows you to be, just brutally honest. Well, Dennis, thank you for being honest with us here on this show. And like, once again, another super awesome referral from our friend Mark England. These guests that have been coming across from him are just a cut, just top of the line. Like I really appreciate the community that you all seem to be a part of, and I look forward to exploring more about your podcast too. Before we, by the way, before we wrap up, did you want to let listeners know where the best place to find you, your website or Instagram or anything else that you would like?
Sure thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to share where I'm coming from, and I appreciate this, guys. It's a cool vibe that you got going on here, and I love what you're doing, and I love giving people an opportunity to go through these things, and I mean to think intentionally about these 13 different realms in your life, and then the follow-up questions. Well done as well, from a podcaster to another podcaster. I recognize the work that you're doing, and just really appreciate it. So thank you for that. The best way to reach out, I mean, I'm the most active on Instagram, is building.men, and my website is buildingmen.io, and I have a big thing coming up in September whenever this is going to be published, where it'll be an ongoing subscription to it. Will be a program called The Foundation, and it's virtual coaching for young men. And I'll have groups for middle school age, high school age, and then beyond, which will be the guys in their late teens, early 20s. There'll be 2 virtual coaching sessions, group coaching sessions per month. One of them will be with a mentor. A lot of the guys that you had mentioned that have been on the podcast will come in once a month to talk about a specific topic related to masculine development. So it could be around accountability, self-discipline, perseverance. It could be about nutrition and finance and technology. So we're getting a lot of the guys that we've had on the podcast to come in and be a mentor for the young men once a month as well.
That's awesome. Is that since it's on the internet, that's available like anywhere, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Buildingmen.io, it's called that. So you can find out about our podcast. You can find out just the history of Building Men, where it came from, about the coaching that we do, the individual and group coaching, and then the program is called The Foundation, and you can sign up to it right there. I think we're charging like $47 per month if you pay per month to subscribe to it, but you can join at any time. And then we'd say, if you're not satisfied after the first month, then we'll refund your money.
Super cool. I will have all those links in the show notes for the listener. And Adam, did you have any last minute thoughts or questions?
No, it was a great interview. I do apologize for being a little silent today, but man, it was, thank you so much for giving us your time and attention.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. I really appreciate having me on.
Yeah, dude. Thank you again for joining us, and I will definitely be in touch.
Awesome, guys. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why I don't know. While she blame him and he blame her, it's useless. Ask yourself this question, why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians, and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't wanna why? 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 I don't wanna
Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why? I don't wanna why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.